Welcome to Movie Heaven, Movie Hell with me, Simon Aitken, and
I'm Keith Eyles, and we are both independent filmmakers who enjoy discussing movies and related media. And for this series of special episodes celebrating 40 years of Star Wars, we are pleased to welcome some guests. So Simon, would you like to introduce our first guest?
I'm joined by screenwriter Antonia McGuire.
Hiya.
Hi Antonia, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you on at last.
And who do you have on with you, Keith?
And we also have a returning guest, Anthony Bueno. Welcome, Anthony.
Hello, hello. Good
filmmaker, documentarian, and all-round good guy.
Oh, yeah. Who am I to disagree?
So, anyway, welcome back.
Thanks very much.
And for this particular episode, we are trying to see if we can bring balance to the Force, because it is the episode where we are going to discuss the latest episode in the Star Wars saga, episode 8, The Last Jedi. So this is going to be a spoilerific podcast. If you haven't, for any reason, seen The Last Jedi yet, we recommend that you hit pause now, go see the film, and then come back to us.
So, how many times has people here seen it? I've seen it twice now.
I've seen it once.
Okay.
It'll be let's just say if I got a free ticket, I'd probably go and see it again, but I'm not going to just go and spend money going to see it.
Okay.
The other thing you wanted to see
this hint?
Kind of. And there were other films I really wanted to see twice at the cinema this year, and I just didn't get a chance. I wouldn't say this is one of those films that I just think, whatever, I'll wait until it's on Sky or something.
Oh, wow, okay. Well, I've seen it twice. I've seen it in 3D IMAX with my mates Ian and Alan, and I was also lucky enough to go to a special BAFTA screening which had a Q&A with Ryan Johnson, Mark Hamill, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Kelly Marie Tran, who plays Rose, Oscar Isaac, Benicio del Toro, and Andy Serkis. So I probably saw it in the best possible scenario one could hope for.
Blimey.
I've only seen it twice, and I can't top what you did.
Oh, well, there you go. But you've seen it twice. Well, did you see it in 3D or 2D?
No, when I see it again, I'll see it in 3D, though.
Okay.
I saw 2D. I was gonna normally when I go and see the Star Wars, I'll see them in 3D, but I couldn't get the tickets for it, and then my mate that I normally go with, he can't necessarily see 3D, and neither can I. So it's just like, well, it's kind of a bit of a waste of time. So once my eyes adjust, I don't really see it in 3D. So I was just like, just save my money this time a bit more, and we'll spill out on the luxury VIP seats in our View Cinema. That was about as much as we went with it.
Yeah, I've only seen it 2D.
Fair enough.
Yeah, okay. I like the idea of 3D more than what I actually get from it most of the time. Some films I do see, and it's like that really sort of like you can see how they really sort of like use how the 3D works. And I'm not going to say Star Wars doesn't. It's just I don't have an overwhelming memory of like, oh, I really saw that. I did see Phantom Menace in 3D when they released that.
Whenever you were one of the few as well, yeah.
Weren't we just saved from seeing all the rest of the films converted to 3D?
I really wanted to see Empire and Jedi in 3D. That was the original trilogy is what I was really looking forward to. And I'd quite happily sit through the Phantom Menace a fair few times if it means seeing like the original, see what they were like. But that's not going to happen now. And again, I don't. Yeah. I'd probably, if they brought the original trilogy out in 3D, I would probably go and watch those because it's the original trilogy. And any excuse to kind of like see them on the big screen always looks good.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll, they will bring them out in 3D at some point.
Yeah,
I'm sure they will because it's just more money they can bleed out the fans.
Oh, of course. I went to see last year. I went to see Rogue One in 4DX. Which I totally, I would never want to go and see a film for the first time in bloody 4DX because it's too distracting. You know what I mean? I want to go and see the film for the narrative, for the movie, not for all the, gimmick around it. And it did just feel. The reason I chose to see that film was, I figured because Star Wars was the first film I ever saw at the cinema, I'd make the first film I ever saw in 4DX a Star Wars film. And it wasn't the first time I watched it. It was one of the repeat viewings. But your seats move and you get dry ice and you get rained on and you get like punched in the back and all sorts of stuff. But it's really actually quite distracting.
And you pay for that?
Yeah, and you pay for that, absolutely. A lot of money as well.
Yeah, people have paid for worse and things like that. But I saw it. There was a Marvel thing down at Madame Tussauds had like the 4D type thing, which was kind of interesting. But I think that's what
it was like. Yeah, that's what it was like. It was the same kind of deal as that, only with a normal film narrative rather than something that's been specifically created to use that environment. But yeah, it did the same. The chairs were essentially the same. So yeah.
I think it's the thing with cinema, and I think the reason why it endures over all of the mediums is because it is passive. I think is the right word. But at least it's not like a computer game where you've got to be fully immersed and be interactive with it. With films, it's just, you could say it's kind of lazy because you just sit back, watch, immerse yourself more, and not be distracted by things. Playing games is like, people always. I remember years ago. I think actually when the interview with Mark Hamill and what's his name? Christopher Walken, when they were like testing out this is the future of film. This is, I can't remember what game it was he did now. Star Commander?
Wing Commander.
Wing Commander, that was
it.
And that kind of era, which we are going back probably about 20 years now, that they thought that was going to be the future of film, and it isn't. I mean, it evolves, and games have evolved, and when you're playing some of these games, it is like playing a film, but it still isn't the same as like sitting in the cinema, feeling immersed, having good sound and having a good picture. But that's kind of as far as people really want to kind of like be bothered with. Like even like having multiple choice things. I remember that was a bit of a thing once. That's the thing with cinema. It's not meant to be that. You're supposed to feel immersed in it and just be kind of like tooting along, like in a little sort of what's the game in Phantom Menace? Pod racing?
Pod racing, yeah.
Pod racing, you're sat there and you're watching it and that's about it. You're not actually controlling anything, and that's part of the enjoyment, I think.
Hey, if it's a good script and a good film, it works without all of that extra gimmick. And I even include 3D in that, since for the history of cinema, they've been trying to do all these sort of gimmicks to try and make it compete with other stuff. But, at the end of the day, if it's a good, compelling story, then all that other stuff doesn't really matter, in my humble opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, that's it. That is exactly But which is the era that we're now living in, is that kind of the spectacle of a story. That it's getting that kind of like blend, and everyone seems to get kind of wrapped up with the Transformer kind of thing, and there's really not much kind of plot. And I do find it sometimes also certainly with Star Wars, there's, because some of the old ones, you look at some of the dialogue, or some of it could be a little bit hammy, or like certainly, or even the acting is, and you certainly saw past it way back then because you kind of didn't think about it as much, at least we didn't as kids. But you certainly become much more critical of it these days. But there is this, some of the blockbusters, they are just that. There's no real sort of like solid story, so it's more about more special effects, getting more visuals, and kind of hopefully it'll paint over all the problems that really it has underneath with the actual script itself. But, you can argue that with the Star Wars films. I could argue with a couple of the films, and some of them I love, some of them I'm not that bothered about. And
So, what did people think of the films then?
I would say impartial-ish. I was very much, when I came out of watching Force Awakens, I was left sort of like feeling, I don't know if I enjoyed that or not. And this one, I came out feeling as though I enjoyed it, but only more than The Force Awakens, which, after much reflection on The Force Awakens, wasn't too hard, because I really don't like The Force Awakens. So it is better than that. And there was some really, really good bits in it that I really enjoyed. But I just came away feeling a bit kind of like, it's still... and I don't think it's not so much problems with The Last Jedi. It's just where this kind of new trilogy is. And there's a lot of things I still don't quite get how their kind of universe has ended up where it is right now after everything that happened in the original trilogy. So there's a lot of things that flowed over from Force Awakens that still bothered me. So there was things like I was saying, like hammy acting, hammy line delivery, and some of the characters just being still a bit kind of annoyingly stupid. And I just don't think it really kind of could have pushed the boundaries as much as it did. Some of the issues that have been kind of flagged up with it about where it's going with the directions, where they're changing the direction, they've changed this and that, Luke Skywalker and all this kind of stuff. I didn't really have any kind of problems with that as such. I found some of it quite funny that 2 years of people theorising about Snork and theorising about Rey's parents, and there's like this massive sort of online thing, and they just like, just completely sort of like pissed all over it, which I thought was hilarious. Because it's just like, well, there you go. That's J.J. Abrams setting up the mystery box in his films, and then essentially Rian Johnson just took a dump in that mystery box. That's what you actually found in it. I thought that was quite funny, knowing that a bunch of fanboys are going to have an absolute meltdown when it was all sort of like very much kind of underplayed, or not even, what wasn't even gone into about Snoke. So I was, it's kind of, it's just, it's a film. It's got its flaws. It's got some really good bits in it, which does sort of like, for me, kind of elevated it. And it definitely ended okay. I didn't sort of mind the ending. But I'm just, very impartial. I'm not rushing to think, God, I can't wait to see that again. There was a point where I was thinking, do I need to see it again just to kind of make my mind up? But it was just like, but if it was any other film, and if it wasn't Star Wars, then why should I really sort of like have to go and spend more money just to try and make my mind up whether it was a good film or not? It should just be quite evident straight away from watching it whether I think it's good or bad, for that matter. So I'm, whatever about it. It's basically kind of how I felt. Over to you. Who wants to jump in now?
All right. Well, I loved the film. I really, really enjoyed it. The thing was, I came away Force Awakens. There was quite a few questions that wasn't answered, and there was a few things where you think, well, why is it that Rey was so powerful, and when it took Luke so many years to get to that kind of same level.
Yeah.
And I think in this film they answered those questions very well. I like the stuff about there being balance within the Force or in the universe, and I like what they did with Luke Skywalker. I don't know what people were expecting. Were they expecting that when Rey turned up, that he would just, take the lightsaber and go, right, let's go and defeat the. Yeah, and
hey, there, what's happening?
Exactly. But then why was he hiding? Why was there a map and stuff?
I did sort of like think, when people have said stuff about it, it's like, well, if you were stuck on the Isle of Wight for about 20 years, how happy would you be about it? Doesn't matter who you are. That's going to wear real thin, real quick. So I didn't have a problem with it. There was a lot of moping about on that island for like, what's it, like an hour or so? Like about half of the film was like moping about. It's like, and it just gets a bit wearing, really. And that's, I don't have issues about where they sort of like had Luke and where it was, and even though they've sort of like said, wow, this goes against who he was years ago. It's like, yeah, but that's, 30 years. Realistically, everybody changes over 30 years. Some of you can be quite optimistic, can be quite pessimistic, depending on the experiences that have happened. So I didn't have any issues with that. It's just all the kind of the moping about, and it was just, and it did feel like, I've seen films like this before. I kept thinking there was a film, American Shaolin. I kept thinking of it, which is a really dumb film. And this lad who he wants to be one of the Shaolin monks, this American lad. He sits outside, and the pigeon became his friend was one of the lines in it. It was just like, it's really bad, but it's one of those really bad films. It was really good because it's so bad. And it was a bit like that. She potters about on this island with nothing much really happening. I don't know. I think it could have been dealt with. I didn't have an issue with where they kind of were. I just like the way they kind of went about dealing with it just became a little bit kind of Yeah. Just anyway. Sorry. Anyway.
No, well, I think what it is that the story with Luke Skywalker was about, you know, trying to convince him to become, you know, Luke Skywalker again. You know, is a man who had lost faith. He felt that he had hurt the people around him, that he had brought this great evil into the universe, and he felt that the best way to deal with it was to cut himself off from the Force, from everybody, and, you know, he couldn't do any more damage. And the whole point of that island was to sort of show him that he was wrong, and he, you know, the galaxy does need him, and he does need to come back. And so when he does, I mean, that the end scene when he faces off against, you know, all those AT-ATs and, you know, and just brushes it off. I mean, that was great, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just what there was so many. I mean, other things about the story I liked was the fact that they would set things up, but they wouldn't play out the way you would think, because
like they say in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just because you know, throughout sort of Star Wars, in the films, the books, the comics, there's been this whole thing where, you know, a character turns to the dark side and another character then has to get them to turn away from it. And you have that a lot, and you have this sort of a lot of conversions going on. I mean, in the comic books, Luke turned to the dark side, and it was Leia who, you know, made him turn away from it.
That was Dark Empire, wasn't it?
That's right.
I seem to remember reading those.
So, but in this case, you know, you thought that Rey was going to go and save Kylo Ren, and if anything, she's made it worse. Because Kylo, you know, not only did he kill his master, but, you know, he's now the bigger bad.
Yeah.
Antonia, is there anything you want to say before because I'm very conscious that I don't want to start rambling on about what I think and dominate it. So I just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to say things before I go wading in.
No, you go ahead, Keith.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, for once, I actually did make notes, because one thing I've learned through doing 100 of these podcasts is I tend to wing it, and then when I hear them back, I'm like, oh, I never mentioned that, and oh, I meant to talk about that, and I never said this, and I never said that. So I've actually, for once, made a list, and I've got a list of things that I liked, but a list of things that I really didn't like as well. So I thought maybe we could go down the list and sort of address some of those things.
You organised, Simon, for this.
There you go. No, for once. Yeah, no, absolutely. I will caveat all of this by saying, though, that in terms of the film itself, I thought it was enjoyable. I thought the ride was enjoyable. So, you know, it was enjoyable to watch. However, I have a lot of problems with it. I think I stand in the minority, because I've noticed most people that I've spoken to really love this. I personally don't like this anywhere near as much as Force Awakens, and definitely not as much as Rogue One. And, you know, for me, yes, this is better than the prequels, but, you know, in terms of the, you know, what has come since the prequels, this for me so far is the weakest entry. So, you know, which surprises some people, but I've got, as I said, I've got my reasons, and you know, as I said, I've made a list so we can go down. I mean, do you want me to start with the light side or the dark side?
Let's go dark, because it's always like, good question. Do you want the what do they normally say now? I can't even remember what they say now. Sort of like good or bad news. Let's go bad.
Okay.
Try and bring ourselves to the light, which ain't going to happen. But
dark side, we must try. Okay, right. Okay, then. Okay. So some of the things I didn't like about it. Then I said I thought I liked the last third of the film, but I had major issues with the first 2/3 of the film. Okay, this is in no particular order. Then, so comedy. All right, I really had a problem with the fact that for me, this film was trying to be like a MCU film in terms of the comedy, and I felt that all the Star Wars films have had comedy. I've got no problem with that, but I really felt that the comedy in this was misplaced. It didn't seem, in my opinion, to fit into the Star Wars universe. Beginning right at the start with the whole I'm on hold for Commander Hux, the sort of phone joke. That was really Tony Stark to me.
Yes, it is.
So I had a major issue with a lot of the comedy in the film. The fact that they threw a lot of comedy in the serious moments that were actually working quite well, and then they put something of comedy in which pulled me out.
It's very kind of sitcom, isn't it? Like American sitcom. Like you have like a serious scene, and it's sort of like, oh, we can cry, but we can laugh too. And they always throw some kind of joke to bring their humour kind of back up again. But it's just like it isn't need that. Although the Hux thing, because Hux, I had most of the time I have a problem with Hux because I find that, and I love like the actor, he does some really, really good stuff. But I find his take on it a bit kind of pantomime Hitler.
Oh, terribly. I mean, Donald Gleason is a good actor. Earlier this year he did, Goodbye Christopher Robin, for example, that's a delightful film, and he's really good in that, right? But I'm sorry, but Rian Johnson, in my opinion, gave the actors way too much free rein in this. Hux was kind of big in The Force Awakens, particularly in that sort of propaganda speech type scene. But that kind of, that they were sort of riffing on the sort of World War II propaganda speech thing. So that kind of worked there. But right from the get-go on this, I thought, oh my God, Donald Gleason, what are you doing? You need to bring this down, way down. And it was like, in my opinion, Rian Johnson needed to go up to him and say, yep, that was good. Can you just take it from a 10 down to a 5, please? Because it was actually bordering on, it was so broad, it was, like you said, bordering on pantomime.
Yeah.
And I had major issues with that, major issues.
With that humour that they put into it, which did bring him down. So in one way, the humour weirdly works, even though I can't say I didn't chuckle at it because I find that kind of dumb thing funny, but it annoys me that it is still there. And it did take that scene, although that scene, or with him, he got a bit better when Snork appears and then just kind of like face palms him right to the ground. It's like, oh, that was nice. And I did like that, seeing his head bash against the floor.
But didn't you guys like the fact that the other commanders saw him as a twit?
I like the fact the other commander is Aid Edmondson.
Well, yes.
Yeah, I thought they were turning into bottom at one stage.
But no, I'm talking about the commander of the Dreadnought.
And he did go full bottom, straight away from the offset. That would have been awesome. Seeing him smack his head up against the console. Jesus would have loved that. But they didn't do that. But that's, sorry, Simon, I completely spoke over you then because I did get quite excited. When everything's like Aid Edmondson, it's just like, oh my God, because my mate is a huge Bottom fan.
Oh yeah, no, me too. I love that show. But Star Wars isn't it. So,
just, there was a missed opportunity there. They could have such a bloody laugh with that, but they didn't. But yeah, yes, exactly. I mean, it does balance that the other fella does think he's an idiot, but it's still... It's not like in Empire. In Empire there was, you had, what's his face from Grain Jokes? I can't remember his name. And there was
Admiral Ozzel. You had Admiral Ozzel and Admiral Piet and Captain Needa in Empire Strikes Back, but there was no silliness. There was no. They were all playing it straight. They weren't being broad and silly like this. But anyway.
Yeah, sorry. We're lingering there probably too long. But yeah, my issue with the humour in a lot of stuff, and actually a lot of some of the latter Indiana Jones films, same thing. They just decided to do this kind of broader stroke of the comedy, and it's just like that's not the humour in those scenes come from the delivery of the performances and the scene kind of, and if there's humour there, it kind of comes out, not because they're deliberately kind of going in there to play a joke. And that's the difference. And they did it in the end, Indiana Jones films in the end, and made them kind of lighter, which, although I did like Temple of Doom a lot, but
they made Marcus Brody, who they'd set up in Raiders as quite a serious guy. Yeah, they turned him into comic relief. But exactly. That
just drove me bloody mad, because it's just like they really played him like a dumb cluck in sort of like the third film. It's like, and same with Salah. They just became kind of like comedy caricatures of themselves. And that's the danger when you do any of this kind of stuff. You can just make it dumb. And just kind of like playing, well, in Star Wars, and you can be a bit hammy. It's just like, isn't really an excuse. And they didn't need to do. You can have humour there, and there can be light moments, but not like playing those jokes. Although the whole waiting on hold thing did make me chuckle. I can't say that it didn't, but I could have also very easily lived without it, though. But I'm just glad they didn't. Was there flying the flag.
So Simon and Antonia, do you disagree with this sort of first point about the humour and the comedy? I mean, I know you guys really enjoyed this, so I want to give you guys perfect opportunity to defend it as well. You know what I mean?
Well, I can completely disagree with a lot of the things you guys have said.
Okay, good. It makes for a much better podcast.
Well, I don't understand why you just didn't like it in the frame of mind of you like the original ones, because I know everyone's main issue is that it's the second one. They wanted to compare it to Empire, and it should have been this, it should have been that. But the fact is, it's nothing like Empire, and it's like you said, everything you saw or you thought saw was going to come didn't come, and that was like the most refreshing thing, which I found myself. And I mean, maybe because I know too much about Star Wars and I've read too many books and I know a bit about the history. Like, it's meant to be a take on what would happen. I mean, the way I read it was that, say, the Empire had won, what the children would have done if they carried on. So a lot of the characters, like Hux, they come from a historical background where they were brought up with the Empire. So it's the Nazi children, I suppose, growing up, and this is why a lot of them are very young. That's the kind of thing. So they're kind of like trying to recreate that. I'm probably not saying it properly, but it's always kind of weird things that super nerds know about this, reading about it, and why there's certain things in the film that don't fit. And obviously they've done that, so you will buy the extra stuff and understand the story more. But I mean, I always sort of, when people start criticising, I think, you're not 8 years old anymore. That's what kind of annoys me, because it's made for an open market, but it's also made essentially for 8 and 12-year-olds. So those humorous jokes, that's very much the same jokes that sat with you in the original Star Wars, but they're just now. But your only comparison of them is the films you've seen recently. So I mean, it may be the trend, but they were very prevalent in the original Star Wars, that kind of humour and that kind of, the loud speeches and stuff they had in them. It did happen in Star Wars, like the meeting in the original Star Wars when they talk like that. It does happen in all those films, but it's just put into these films, just done differently, because a lot of it is very homage-y, very, very subtly, but very homage-y to the originals. I mean, they even sort of did that with the prequels, which we didn't really want, but they did it because it is part of that universe. But yeah.
No, I mean, I think you make a really fair point. And one of the things that this film absolutely does accomplish is the fact, often The Force Awakens got a lot of criticism that it was very derivative of A New Hope and whatever, and kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas this definitely isn't the dark second chapter like The Empire Strikes Back was, and it's gone its own way as far as that goes. So, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Well, I take The Force Awakens as a way of sort of saying, this is your Star Wars that you've been waiting for, because let's all face it, when everyone saw The Phantom Menace, we were all like, yes, this is going to be the new Star Wars. And what pisses me off about that fact is that it does sit there in cinematic history, but it's a film that most people brought tickets to go and see and saw. It wasn't a multi-viewing screening that people saw it, but it was like, was it pre-sale tickets, people going to see it, and that story about people going into cinema, buying a ticket to see the trailer?
Yeah.
You know, that will go down in history. So, like, they couldn't undo all that history, but they did The Force Awakens, and it was, you know, this is what the Star Wars you've been waiting for. And I know so many people had issues with that. And I remember reading this really, I would say, narcissistic and sexist article saying, oh, it's all very feminist orientated because, was it Kathleen Kennedy is now the head of Star Wars? Mm. But I never really felt that. It just felt very, they were going their own way for it. I mean, it's a trilogy series. There's so many things that aren't going to be explained. I mean, I read something today about how they've set Kylo Ren's character up as the biggest baddie you could possibly get because he has killed his master, which is very much the next one. He's going to be not essentially the most organised or scary, but he has the most to go for. Like, you had Darth Vader, let's face it, despite he was scary as hell as a kid, he didn't do much, did he? Like, when he was in Rogue One, that was the first time you saw him kicking ass.
Oh, yeah.
But you knew for a fact that he was big, scary, and he wore a helmet, that he was not a nice person. But in this one, it's kind of, you've seen him develop. Like, the prequels, they didn't give you enough of his history. Or they made him whiny. They made him really, like, he was the least...
They really did, yes.
It just, everything you thought it was going to be, it really wasn't.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the prequels were supposed to be a fall from grace, but there was no grace to fall from.
Yeah.
He just started off bad. Well...
He stubbed his toe.
Well, he didn't start off bad, but by the second film, he was, he was a bit of an arsehole.
Yeah.
And he's not exactly somebody you would look back on with fond memories.
Yeah. And the love story that split the universe or something, they said, and it's like, what? No. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things wrong with that, like the acting, the way it was laid out. Like, was it the story of George Lucas? He was writing scenes where he was driving to the sets. You know, it was very much, that just sounds really bad, because it was a whole yes man sort of scenario where everyone said yes, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And no one said to him, like, that doesn't quite work. I mean, people said that about, J.J. Abrams, that he was another yes man for The Force Awakens, but, I mean, I don't think as much as George Lucas, because he was everyone just wanted to work on that film. And people that work on that film.
Yeah, but I mean, I think with J.J. Abrams, he's a very good mimic. Mm. If you want somebody to make a Steven Spielberg film, but you can't afford Steven Spielberg, then you get J.J. Abrams.
Mm.
And because when you watch Super 8 is like a Steven Spielberg film, but it wasn't made by him.
So where does everyone stand on Rian Johnson and his previous films? Because I really like his film. Like, I was actually looking on IMDb. He's not really done much, but what he has done, you know of it, you're aware of it, and it does stand out.
What's he done again? Because I haven't looked him up and I can't remember.
Brick and Looper.
And
he's done
Looper.
And
yeah.
The
Breaking
Brothers
Bad.
Balloon.
Yeah, and a few episodes of Breaking Bad.
Yeah,
I know
in fact,
some people that
I
just
liked
sell
an
itself.
episode of Breaking Bad very much,
Mm.
yes. But, I mean, well, I've got a few, as we carry on, I guess, with the issues, it will bring some of the other things out. But, I mean, just to sort of come back to what you were saying, one of the things I do think is better with the Star Wars films now, and I don't think they've necessarily made it a thing like that. You said that somewhat sexist review that you might have read of it is the fact that I do think it is more representative now in terms of the cast, but I really don't think they've sort of made it a thing. I don't even really think about it. It just seems, we've got a new set of characters that the old set have passed the baton across to, and the new set of characters are great.
Yeah.
I've got no issue with apart from Hux's slight overacting in this particular film.
He's ginger. He's got a
issue with the
compensate.
characters. He's represented the ginger. Yeah, there you
they're
go.
very angry and very put down upon. But I mean,
Like it.
I do.
I had a bit of a problem with Benicio del Toro as well.
Really?
Again, a great actor.
Yeah.
But it was funny, in the Q&A, this actually came out. They asked about the stutter.
Yeah.
And obviously that was something that Benicio, brought to it. But apparently right after he did the first take, one of the producers that was on set said to Ryan Johnson, are we sure about this? And Ryan Johnson just went, no, it's great. Yeah, let him carry on, and endorsed it. But again, I'll be honest, it pulled me out of the film a bit. I thought, this isn't the usual suspects. This is like, Star Wars. And I suppose it didn't matter, but I found it a tad distracting, I have
thought
to
it was
say.
kind of
but,
cool and endearing, because we've watched, so me and Simon, the Rebel series.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of characters quite similar to him. And there's a part of me that was like, oh, all the kids out there that stutter, they're going to find that really cool, Well, there's a soft part of me that was like that.
Yeah, until he betrayed the resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then did he? Did he? We don't know.
He
Yeah,
did.
did he?
I think he did. I think he really did. I mean, the fact that Hux goes, oh, somebody actually telling the truth for a change. But I mean, just sort of going back to the humour, I didn't find the humour that abrasive, to tell the truth. I quite enjoyed it. I mean, there
wasn't any farting jokes.
No, there's no farting
Thank
jokes, no stinky poo or anything like that. And the porgs? I thought that was handled really well, because quite potentially it was like this thing where it could have quite been the Ewoks of the series.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm not a massive fan of the Ewoks particularly, but at least the Ewoks were absolutely integral to the plot and, did something. These porgs, I mean, the cynic in me, and, I am now old and cynical compared to the first trilogy, but, the cynic in me says that the porgs were in there just to... for them to be able to sell the plush toys. I mean, Edith Bowman, who actually did a really good job of the Q&A, I have to say, she actually had a plush porg with her, and the porgs were kind of, I mean, they were just there to be cute and to, make Chewie feel bad about possibly eating one of their cousins or whatever he was doing.
Oh, it wasn't possibly, it was definitely a porg he had on a stick.
Yeah.
Exactly. They didn't. I mean, I'll be honest. The porgs are one of the things on my list that I had a bit of a problem with. But I mean, only from a cynical, they were just there for the kids to be cute and sell toys side, as opposed to the porgs didn't really do anything in this film other than be mildly irritating for me. But
they made the whole island quite interesting, because imagine if he'd sat on the island, because there's a Twitter account, was it Lonely Luke Skywalker?
Yeah.
And it is hilarious.
Lonely Luke,
and it just takes the mickey about him being on the planet. And imagine he was there on his own, like literally on his own. I mean, the porgs make it a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, the porgs and the fish people.
The caretakers, yeah.
The caretakers, yeah. and of course the big creature that gave him the green milk.
Yeah.
Straight from the teat.
Oh, come on, that moment was classic. Especially when it looked over at Ray. It was like, you want some?
She looked a bit embarrassed, didn't she? Yeah, it was kind of... Okay, I mean,
special thing between her and Luke, but no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
No. Luke made me laugh the way he winked at her. He took a good old swig of it with it still all in his beard and stuff, and kind of gave her like a crusty old tramp look. It was kind of...
How do you guys feel about Luke Skywalker's character? Because I know there's a lot of flack people saying that. Well, I can imagine they expected him to be all heroic and, like you said, come back in swinging a laser sword. But I think there wasn't anything you could do with the character, because to me, he, not being ageist, but he was pretty old. And it just, if they'd made the film earlier, he could have come back in kicking ass. But it was just very much, I think what they did was quite good. And I know there's this whole thing about, I think you were saying, he should have come and been the, you know, the new Yoda. But then that would have been too predictable. I really like the fact he did basically fuck all. But he did a lot doing fuck all. It was only at the end that he kind of stepped up his game. Which made it really interesting.
That one I do agree with you on, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, like you said, we don't know exactly how long he's been on that planet, but it's more than a decade. Or it looks like it's more than a decade.
There's something in The Force Awakens when everything sort of like went a bit pear-shaped, and they said, like, I'm sure it'd been like 20 years or something like that, which...
Yeah.
Maybe?
Well, I mean, possibly, but, you know, I didn't so much have a problem with the fact that he, you know, he was sort of cynical about the Jedi and felt that he'd failed, and, you know, because of what happened with Ben Solo and, you know, all of that stuff. But the one thing that did bother me, and I've got this on my list, is, again, you know, JJ set us up beautifully at the end of the last film, you know, with this whole, you know, Rey bringing the lightsaber to Luke and handing it to him. I have to say, when he just kind of threw it over his shoulder, I did actually want to groan. I was kind of, oh, come on. We had this amazing build-up for that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's ironic because he jumped into being a hero, and now he's given the opportunity to be a hero again. He doesn't want to do it. And again, she's jumped into being a hero, and she's wanting to do it. So it's gone, you know, full flip mode on both of them, where they've taken the opposite, you know, the roles over of each other, but very subtly, because it's not a really obvious sort of thing.
Yeah, I didn't have any issues with where kind of Luke is. It doesn't. I kind of get where people are coming from, but it's like, because I know there's all the fan fiction and things like that, so they're all expecting something else. But I've never read any of that, and I've only just gone by that. And you just think, well, if in course of events, if this has happened and that's happened. Doesn't matter how optimistic you are, things can happen, and you can change a lot over the course of 30 years. So where he was and his kind of mindset and stuff like that was never like an issue with me. I got a bit fed up with it because it went on for like an hour of moping about and stuff, and it just got on my nerves like that, to be honest. But as far as like where he is, I suppose, mentally and stuff like that, it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't have issues with it, and you know. I mean, the thing is, like, what one fan community would love, the other would hate, and there's always going to be that kind of conflict between everybody, and they all want the Luke Skywalker of old, and like you say, come back like flipping around like Yoda did in Attack of the Clones or something. But I didn't really have an issue. I mean, most of my issues really stem from because I didn't like The Force Awakens, and I just didn't understand half the stuff that was how they got to that point again, and it wasn't really explained. And but the only issue with Snork I have is like, I don't kind of care less who he is, but I just kind of want to know how did he become there in the first place when they'd already gone through all of that, and the whole point of the original trilogy was getting shot at the Empire, getting shot at the Emperor, and that's it. And then they've like landed themselves with another one in the space of about 20 odd years or however long the First Order is supposed to be about. And a lot of that hasn't been explained to me. But anyway, maybe I've missed a point somewhere along the films, but.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot of stuff that still has. I mean, that was the other thing. Is I know this is only, you know, the second in act of this sort of next chapter, if you like. But you know, there was a lot of mystery set up in Force Awakens that you know, we sort of expected maybe to get answers for in this, and we actually didn't get that many answers.
But that's an issue that I've got with The Force Awakens, is like all these questions, and it's like it creates this intrigue, which is okay, fair enough, but it also kind of detracts from thinking about the film itself. It's sort of like, it's like, oh well, this is okay because it's actually a part of a bigger, grander plan, but it stops the film from being a self-contained film. And sort of like having its proper beginning and end, and sort of like, and that like Star Wars was, and Empire to a certain degree. And this film felt more like that beginning and end kind of film. But that's my issues with The Force Awakens. It's like, well, no, this would all get explored. It's like, well, yeah, but we kind of know that. But there was a lot of stuff like that going on with the film, which I just thought really was a distraction from actually it's kind of like a remake of Star Wars. It's kind of like that. There's a lot of similarities between it, and far too many for me to feel, just comfortable to sort of like sit there as just a casual viewer to think, okay, this is fresh and new and something we haven't seen before. It just,
apparently JJ and Lawrence Kasdan had actually done an outline for this episode, but Ryan Johnson, when he came on board, basically asked Kathleen Kennedy if he could just throw it out and do his own thing. So this is basically Ryan Johnson continuing what JJ had set up, but not sort of following any of the strands that Kasdan and Abrams had put in their outline, because that was kind of discussed at the Q&A a little bit as well. So this is completely, Ryan Johnson's version of this completely. He both wrote and directed this. So the bits that don't tie up are because he's taken them off in his own direction, if you like.
That's right. So I didn't mind where he took them. I find that's really interesting, because basically Ryan Johnson has done to J.J. Abrams what J.J. Abrams did to George Lucas with his version of the script. I think Kathleen Kennedy, I know Lucas did a version of whatever The Force Awakens was going to be.
Yes, he did.
Just kind of threw out, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to do this, which is fair enough. It's their films now, and they do what they like with it. So that does amuse me slightly.
But JJ's now coming back to be a finisher, which will be interesting, because JJ historically has been one of these guys, whether it's on television or movies, where he's been good at setting things up, but hasn't necessarily been a finisher. Lost as a prime example. Star Trek he set up and then he moved on. Et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be interesting now he's coming back to see where he will now sort this from what Johnson's left us with, which it is kind of left with still a lot of stuff to sort out, as you'd expect from a second chapter, to be fair. So
well, I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the third one, because J.J. Abrams is the only director I've ever really read so many things about, and he's very apologetic for his own work. Like, he's apologised profusely for things in Star Trek, and he's apologised for things in Star Wars because he's made mistakes where, that's fair enough, but he's the only director I've ever read anything about that actually really apologises to people about his work. Well, I don't think Ryan Johnson's really going to give a flying monkeys about people saying anything about the work he's done. But just wanted to say that, because I do like J.J. Abrams, but he's the only director I've ever seen really apologises for things. And he doesn't really need to. There's more directors out there that should apologise for things.
No, he needs to apologise for Star Trek Into Darkness.
Oh, don't get Star Trek Into Darkness.
You paid to go see that.
This is why I like him, because he's apologetic. There you go.
It just sounds so British, though.
I'm sure the money that he got paid for doing that helps his sort of guilt somewhat. With I like JJ. I don't think we've ever interviewed him and stuff, and I'm not heard anything bad about him as such. But I always felt there was, like, everyone raved about him, and I just thought I've seen a couple of things that he did at the time when people were raving about him, and there was like him and Josh Whedon. I thought I kind of enjoyed Josh Whedon's stuff far more than what. And J.J. Abrams' stuff was getting far more recognition than Josh Whedon was at that particular point in time. It must have been about 15 years ago when I was having a conversation with someone about it. And now, obviously, things are quite different now.
I was going to say, Josh is doing all right as well.
Not really. He's a bit in trouble at the moment, Josh Whedon.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. Josh Whedon's a bit in trouble, isn't he?
He's been a bit. He's
one of those ones. I think something's coming out about that.
Oh, right.
But beyond that, what do you guys actually think of the action? It's thank God it's not Fury Road with a road, but I did like the way it went. Because there was a point. There was a point I was thinking, how many people are left alive when they're killing them off? But it was really like I really felt for them, because there was so much things going wrong for them, but they kept going.
Well, yeah, can I just say, the thing about Empire, when I think about it, is that even though the Empire was breathing down their necks, it didn't feel like it was going to be the end of the rebellion, because we knew there was more rebels somewhere else.
Yeah.
But with this, I felt the stakes. I felt that, if they couldn't escape the First Order, then that would have been it. That would have been the end of the resistance.
Yeah.
I mean, you just saw their numbers just dwindle all the time.
When The Force Awakens, they destroyed those planets which hold the Republic. And that's, their main, help they had. There was no one really else. So there was that sort of weight of information if you thought about it. But I mean, that was really like bleak. And then thinking Leia was
it had its darkness for sure. And the way they handled some of that stuff. I mean, I'll be honest, I've not yet read any of the reviews on this at all, and I've also not seen too much about the making of it, apart from the little bit that I sort of gleaned from the Q&A. But one of the things I've got on my list here, while we're sort of on the point of action, I thought the action was good, but one of the things that I felt with this is this film, to me, and I don't know whether it was, but whereas Force Awakens and Rogue One, where they did rely, a lot on, visual effects, as all Star Wars films do, they actually sort of went back to that sort of old school filmmaking of doing a lot of stuff practically and for real. This film, to me, felt a lot more sort of green screeny prequel type.
Really?
Well, actually, they apparently made 100 sets. There was 100 sets originally, initially, they were going to do, but then I think, because I watched something online about it, where they had to double up on their sets, so they just adjusted some of the sets, and it's all the same sets. They're just redoing them. But initially, there was going to be 100 sets for all these different scenes. So it is very that they've all made sets. Not a lot of it is green screened.
Okay, because I must admit, I mean, the bit I'm referring to specifically here, which is another bit that I really didn't like in the film, was the whole, part of the whole subplot, which was a bit of a waste of time. But the casino planet thing, I absolutely hated that. That felt like one of the prequels to me. Really? The whole thing with the casino planet.
Well, that's kind of in lieu with the Star Wars universe. That, I mean, that is essentially what the universe is like. I mean, when you think of Star Wars, I mean, you only ever thought they were in spaceships and in space and little bits here and little bits there. You didn't actually see the whole world. I mean, George Lucas went OTT when he did the prequels because you saw way too much, and that was pure green screen. So I think they're gradually going to give you more of a taste of the whole universe, because, I mean, I think when the Solo film comes out.
Yeah,
that's one of the films you're going to see more of that kind of universe. Because, to be fair, we haven't seen a lot of the universe. There's not even much said about the universe really out there, and it is really weird when you think of it. There's been 6 films, but we still don't know anything about the extent of the universe. Where you can say fairly enough, a lot about Star Trek. So it's like there is so much out there that they, it's amazing when you have science fiction. You can make things up and it's believable, and just use a couple of weird words and it makes it sound cool. So I mean. That's to me, because I've read some of the books and read the comics. There's the whole Mos Eisley world and stuff, the city. So I think they're trying to set a lot more up, because they're definitely going to have more of Coruscant in the next one. That wasn't blown up.
Oh, well. I mean, the other thing I liked about that section was that you actually saw people kind of being downtrodden. I mean. So if you take the kids in Last Jedi to the kids who were supposedly slaves in Phantom Menace.
Happy little lives.
Yeah, I mean, Anakin, he had it easy. He could run around, he could build pods, he could race them, he could...
So yippee.
Yippee. He can build, he can build C-3PO. And these poor kids, they're having to live in the stalls with those creatures. They're being whipped. They are like urchins, and as much as the rebellion and the resistance are fighting for the downtrodden, we never really did see the downtrodden. So it was kind of interesting to see that for once, And I like the fact that they went back to him at the end, and the final shot with the kid looking up and seeing what must have been the Millennium Falcon, but like a star streaking off. I thought that was a beautiful ending shot. I mean, much better than the ending shot to Force Awakens.
Yeah. The ending
shot.
shot.
I guess it was a scene of optimism, wasn't it?
Yes.
You know, that end, because obviously he had the resistance ring that I guess Rose had given him.
But did you notice something else that the kid did? Did you see the way
he made the broom fly to him?
Exactly.
Like
yes.
Like he was force sensitive or
That's
or whatever.
Right, yeah.
So yeah. I mean, it was you know, it was very.
Which would be the link between Star Wars.
Spielberg would have liked that ending, you know, kids and shooting stars and stuff, you know.
Yes.
Oh, no, we need Vic and Bob in the next one if they're shooting stars. Oh, God, that'll be awesome. Hayden Edmondson, Vic and Bob. We want to see dog fingers.
But did you, the whole subplot with Finn and Rose, right? Which I actually kind of liked their relationship and those characters. I thought they worked nice together. But obviously their subplot was kind of an ill-fated one. And did you sort of feel that? I mean, I felt like that had just been sort of stuck in to give those two characters something to do in the film, rather than sort of. It didn't really feel like it sort of served anything in the bigger picture. But
I don't know. I mean, because I think, I don't know what else they could have done instead, because the whole point of that was that Poe, Finn, and Rose were trying to do something to help the Capitol ship escape. They were trying to take the tracker off, and because they didn't know, and it's a spoiler, but they didn't know what the main plan was. They just thought that they were just going to keep running until they ran out of fuel, that their leaders didn't know what they were doing, when the leaders actually had a plan but just wasn't willing to tell anybody. And so it felt right that they would go through this to try and save the Capitol ship, to come up with something. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, they are rebels.
But that's one of the problems there, though, was like, why didn't she tell them? Why? I mean, I know Poe, almost killed off all their pilots.
Yes. Got demoted, yeah.
For it. And got
around the face.
That was it. That's harsh. Captain Kirk blew up a ship, got demoted. He wipes out nearly all their crew. He got demoted. I can see where they were thinking with that. But this was kind of part of the problem with it. Was like, well, why didn't she just tell? I mean,
we don't really do that in the military. You're not always very forthcoming with your information about strategy, because you have to keep it under wraps just in case it goes wrong. So she didn't tell him for a reason. For like, obviously he messed up. And because in military strategy, you don't always tell the information, because you shouldn't question the chain of command. I think that's why they did it.
But that's
she was a very good-looking military woman in a very stunning dress.
The kind of character that he is, he's obviously he is a rebel. So he's going to do something really bloody stupid if he doesn't agree with it, which you could see that he didn't. So there's kind of like, I understand, like, chain of command and stuff like that, but there is a point where it's like, well, this fella could really bollocks it all up for us, because he's already done it once today, and he might do it again. So they've really either got to lock him down and slam him in a cell or something, rather than, go for a little wander around, and then his ship gets blown up, and then Finn, for some reason, there to give him a nice little rub on the chest when he flies back. I don't quite get that bit. That there's somehow, like, it needed a bit of him at least running towards him, like a nice slow-mo of Finn running towards him as whatever his name, Poe got blown backwards. They should
have just killed him in the last film like they were supposed to.
Yeah, but if they kill him in the last film, you won't have the romance of Rey. Because at the very end of the film, you kind of think, oh yeah, that's the look. there's
Oh, you mean the same look he gave Finn at the end of Force Awakens?
No, he bit his lip for that. Well, it's basically, I think this film, they're going to do a love triangle somehow, whether it's with Finn and Poe and Rey, or Rey and Poe and Kylo, or
all of them literally in a triangle.
Yeah.
I mean, the fan fiction smut must be like rolling in it now.
Oh yes,
coming up with the ideas.
But I must admit, I did like the story arc with Poe. I mean, the fact that he was this headstrong pilot who, you know, he's a loose cannon, and at the end he starts to realise, actually, you know, it's not worth killing all these people just to destroy one thing. That, you know, life does matter, and, you know, sometimes there is no failure and retreat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think he does learn that. I mean, one of the things I really liked about it, I thought Laura Dern's character, complete with her purple rinse, was great. You know, I thought she worked well.
Phyllis.
Well, I have to say, it seems to be like Laura Dern's year, because she was also great in the Twin Peaks: The Return.
Yeah, with many hair shades in that as well.
Yes.
So what did everyone think of like the baddie aspect of the film? Because I was actually them killing Snoke that was really, no one saw that coming.
I thought,
actually really liked that.
It was a real pisser because I was really, really enjoying him. And I really wanted to kind of see where it'd go, but I thought it was a good. Personally, I liked it. I liked the fact that they did that. I thought it was a good enough kind of like twist of like, and then it's not following the same kind of path as what Jedi and what you kind of might become Jedi or what's his face?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that bit, because that whole part started to feel very much like the throne room in Jedi, with the whole look at your fleet being destroyed, and, you know, come to me and, you know, turn to the dark side and all this sort of stuff. And the fact that they kind of completely 180'd that and kind of got rid of Snoke was definitely a surprise and a change of course.
I love the fact they didn't explain anything about him. They probably will say something about him later on. But the fact is, like, in the originals, you didn't know anything about who the Emperor was. You just think the Emperor, he's got a big name, he's the Emperor. But you didn't need to know that he was a baddie. You just need to know that he was the Emperor. And with Snoke, there's so many theorising, like he was Darth Plagueis, that being the Emperor's old teacher. And in the end, it didn't matter shit, because, you know, he's gone now. It just
we'll get a whole series of novels about Snoke, no doubt.
Yeah.
But that was a thing that I think that the difference though between like the original trilogies, that at that point anyway, there wasn't really anything kind of before that we knew about.
Yeah.
So we just, you know, he could have been around for X amount of like decades and then he's become the Emperor and Sith Lords and blah, blah, blah. But for me, with like the Snoke character, it's like, well, this is like I said earlier, like you had the original trilogy getting rid of all of that, getting rid of the Empire and the Emperor. And then within the space of X amount of like 30 years, then there's somebody else just as powerful as it would seem. So where did he come from? Because he looks quite old, so he definitely would have been around at that time. So
I think
for me, it needed to kind of have some kind of correlation. So it's like, okay, well, this was like, you know, like a Vader's Secret Apprentice, which would have been, I would have loved to have done like that, like they've done in the computer games, but just something that gave some kind of context to how they missed him completely in that original time and any other time since. That, and the same way as like with the First Order, it's like, how did they let this happen again? I know we had like kind of World War I and World War II, but it was, you know, that's the thing that's kind of bothered me the most about these. It's like, how did all this, like, how did anybody let any of this happen again? And how did they build like a Death Star that was like 10 times or whatever times the size of what the other one was?
When the books, they never actually got rid of the Empire. They just sort of, you know, they're meant to have like amalgamized it with the Republic, but then, as they explained about the arms dealing and how people make their money, it never did go away. So that's always right for people like Trump coming forward and just, you know, controlling everything and monopolising everything. And I think, but I mean, explaining that again, it's going to go in way too much detail. I can just see like my 9-year-old niece's face looking at me like, what? There's some things that you really don't need to know. And if it's just Leia saying one thing in it, that's probably the most they're going to do. Because they don't even go into so many reasons why Ben Solo got so evil. You know, he was being manipulated by Snoke, and then Luke looked in his head. You don't need to know much more than that, because it's, you know, there's a lot that's kind of explained just with the lineage, the fact that his granddad is Darth Vader. Yeah. So you know that
there's the potential of the dark side in all of them. That could happen. So we didn't need. I know for me that's been, my big issue has been. Well, I kind of just need to if that happened then, and they did this, and they all went, and then how did all this rise again within X amount of years? And that's what's been one of my biggest problems with this sort of like new trilogy. That it's something that I just kind of need. I don't necessarily care who sort of like people are. Just how did this particular event happen all over again? And they're doing the same thing.
Well, I'll give you a tip. Never ever read the extended universe, the non-canon books they did over the years that I read when I was younger, because oh my frigging god, there was so much stuff going on that every year in the timeline they did for the stories of the Star Wars characters, they always had a different big bad come up, and they came out of nowhere and they did this, and they did that, they defeated them. But those books, they kept giving them big bads every year by different authors. I mean, that was something that really got on my nerves. At least with this one, you think, oh, there's this one big bad, and this is what's been building up. Because you can kind of see this, even though it is the Empire, it's not called the Empire, so it's probably been building up secretly. Because again, I've read the books that are now canon. I have to get my canons right. They explain that it has always been there, that it never did go away. They just had them subtly in the back.
Which would actually make a lot of sense, because when you think about it, the Empire, this was one of my problems with Jedi to a certain extent, was, they have the Battle of Endor, and then it all seems to be, all tied up in a nice bow, and you think to yourself, well, hold on, the Empire are vast and they're across the galaxy, so surely so just someone else will take command and they'll carry on. And I mean, this is one of the good things with the fact that this is more than 30 years on from the end of Return of the Jedi to the sort of beginning of Force Awakens. So I think that bit's quite plausible that the First Order could have formed and like you said, never gone away. I think that sort of works. And one of the things I did like, much as I didn't like the casino planet and the subplot bit, I did think that the explanation about the money not only builds the TIE fighters and TIE bombers and things of that nature, but also the X-Wing fighters. I thought, well, again, that makes total sense. That is kind of like the real world almost, with the sort of arms, race as it were. So I did like that part.
I think
it's with Rogue One, the kind of muddying of the waters. That just because they're all good doesn't mean to say that they're that good that they're not prepared to do deeds that would be seen as being bad or evil. And what I quite liked about Rogue One that did that. And that's the same type of thing. It's like, well, they're buying in. Effectively they probably stole from Tony Stark.
Yeah, exactly. It's back to the MCU again.
It's all coming together now. Disney own everything.
There you go. It's art imitating life. Yeah, exactly.
One thing I liked
what about? I mean, how do we all feel about Kylo Ren, stroke Adam Driver, and sort of the Force and the way that Rian Johnson has sort of expanded on what we know about the Force? I mean, how do we feel about that in this film?
I think he did a really good job of it, because he didn't make it too completely unbelievable, and there isn't a lot of things that are explained about the the Jedi and the Force from the originals, not going to prequels and the midichlorians, which no one cares about. Thank God they didn't mention that. But I do think he did a really good job of that, because he made it, they were more like, they could do more than we actually realise, and there's going to be more that we're going to see. But I think how he handled it was really well done and not too ambitious. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, the one thing I like about Ryan...
It was lucky that they've got Force time in a galaxy far, far away, so that they've got Force time, so they can see each other and have calls.
That was, I said, it's like, I can't remember what I was listening to, but it's like Wizards in Space, and that's very kind of building on the wizardry of sort of like what they're all able to do. I mean, like that, the way that Kylo Ren does polish off old Snoke was. Because I mean, there's many times I've been watching Jedi. It's like, instead of just kind of like pulling the sword to him and then striking, why don't you just spin it and turn it on by using the Force? That would have sorted it out straight away. And
yeah,
so
but that wasn't in Luke's nature to do that.
That's not what Jedi do.
that's just piss poor really on Luke's side. But anyway, but I do like the way that he. The way that, I thought that there was some aspects of that film I really liked, and the whole kind of relationship that was kind of building between him and Rey, and this kind of exploration of stuff was really good fun. And that scene with Snoke and stuff was one of my favourite parts of the film. And Andy Serkis is a legend anyway. I love Andy Serkis. He's like seems like a genuinely lovely fella, but he really sort of like brought something to that. And that's the only thing that I was gutted about what happened when they polished him up, was that you're just not going to get more of that, because I really enjoyed it. I just, there was so much more energy within that scene, so to speak, than some of the other stuff that was kind of going on within the film. So, but either way, I still agree with what they did. It's just a shame, because I was really getting into that and really enjoying it as well, but makes it more impactful, I suppose.
I think as a director, Rian Johnson, he's like from Brick and Looper. Everything he's done, there is a reason in it. Because, you guys seen Looper, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We see, if you watch it back after watching out what it actually means, there is everything in it has a purpose and a reason, and the same within Brick. Because when you look back about what happened to the kid in it, it's like, oh, you actually did tell us that, and that was actually, we could have just known that sort of thing in the film. And I think he's done that, even though you probably have to keep watching it again. I mean, I've only watched it twice, but there is probably a lot in it that you have to go back and realise.
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the things you all know from other podcasts that I'm Captain Continuity, yeah. And one of the things that was driving me nuts during the film, and then of course it paid off at the end, was when Luke came back in inverted commas. Yeah, I thought to myself, hold on. So he's dyed his beard, he's cut his hair. What the fuck,
really trim.
But then when he took the lightsaber out, and I'm like, he's got the wrong lightsaber. He's supposed to have the green lightsaber, and that's the lightsaber we just saw get bloody ripped in half, 2 scenes ago. What's going on, and all this, and then of course, he's a forced projection, and it's like, oh, okay, and that's how they remembered him like 20 years earlier or whatever it was. So, so you're right. He sets things up, and I looked at it as a mistake initially, and then it absolutely, made total sense and paid off when we got the reveal at the end. So, although I still don't get why he had the blue lightsaber and not the green one, but that's just being nitpicky.
I think it was just one of the sort of symbolism for Kylo Ren's character, that he had that lightsaber, which I think the lightsaber that Maz Kanata had and that Rey was given was Anakin's lightsaber, but was also Ben's lightsaber, because he keeps saying it's mine. Not when you kind of think, oh, that's because it was your granddad's, but then you see the scene where Luke Skywalker goes to kill him and he pulls out a blue lightsaber, and it's the same lightsaber. So
we still don't know how Maz got it from Bespin, though, do we? Like some 35 years earlier, but that's a whole nother story, I guess.
I still love the joke where this is one of the memes that came out of Force Awakens, going, "There's a hand with that."
Yeah, where's Luke's hand? Yeah, there you go. In fact, that's one of the things I thought, unfortunately, Maz in this was a bit, that sort of FaceTime call, that Skype call they have with her while she's in the middle of a battle, so she could sort of tell them where to go.
But that's, I think, because she was a fan favourite, they had to bring her back. I mean, she's an interesting character. But yeah, you generally felt they needed a character that would be known, that you could trust, and they could use her. But then the whole, how does Poe know her?
I have to say, I must admit, it was kind of like, when I saw it, it just reminded me of the FaceTime call Spock does to Spock in Star Trek Into Darkness.
That's Spock.
It was very much like that. It was kind of like, we got to get them in again. Oh, let's just do we don't normally talk about, but having said that, let's get another one of those scenes in. But it did feel a bit like that. But she is a loved character and a good character, and it was interesting to see the flying off with the rocket pack at the end. I was like, oh wow, okay, that's cool. But
so, what was your least favourite part of the film, guys? Like when you really didn't like that it chewed you up the wrong way.
Well, I've said quite a bit of it, I think. But one other thing, I've got one more thing on my list of not likes before I go into all the likes. And the one other thing I had on my list of not likes was the crystal critters were clearly just I liked them, but they were clearly just a Deus Ex Machina, a plot point there to show the sort of where the rebels could escape from. They didn't really seem to be there to serve any more purpose than that and look pretty, but they were well done, I thought. But it was in there for that reason alone, wasn't it? To provide the escape, as it were. But and I thought Phasma was wasted in this film.
Yeah,
she's been wasted in all the films. To tell the truth, I mean, she was wasted in the first one.
I suppose she was, to be fair. Yeah,
there's not much you can do with the character. I mean, I think that's as much as you're going to get out of her because she's just the lead stormtrooper person.
Yeah. I mean, if you didn't have Kylo Ren, then Captain Phasma could have filled that role. But it was a case of that. Kylo Ren was the new Darth Vader, so I don't know. She's
the new Boba Fett.
No, I wouldn't say she was the new Boba Fett. I'd just say she's like lead stormtrooper.
Yeah. But one thing that did drive me mad, and this is real geek territory, but it's the scene that had my favourite thing and my least favourite thing all in one scene, right? What annoys me is since the prequels, they seem to have retconned the fact that everybody can understand astromech droids all of a sudden, and the fact that Luke could understand R2 when he saw him in the Falcon wound me up, because definitely in the original trilogy, without a translator like 3PO or a thing within the cockpit of the X-Wing, he could not understand R2, and now all of a sudden he can. That annoyed me, but I also love the fact that he projected Leia from A New Hope. I thought that was wonderful. So there was a thing I liked and a thing I didn't, all in one scene there.
I have to say it was every time Carrie Fisher was on screen, it was kind of tough to watch, and the bit when she went out into space from the
you love that bit.
Well, I mean, I thought that was it. That was going to be her send-off.
Me too.
But then she used the Force to get back, even though the shot did make her look a bit like Mary Poppins.
Yeah, very much.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind it. I mean, because she's. I mean, when she comes out of her coma, I thought that was great. Especially. Shooting Poe, was that like the laser she had in New Hope? I mean, it certainly was. Set to stun. Yeah.
No, that was like full circle, and obviously I love the fact that there was the dedication to her at the end of the film. Obviously, we knew what they were going to do, but it does leave that big question now: what the hell are they going to do in the next film? Because clearly when they made this, they had the intention of. Leia being in the next one as well. Well,
she was meant to be the most prominent old character, so it felt that Force Awakens was more about Han,
yes.
And then The Last Jedi was obviously about Luke, and then the last one was going to be more focused on her character, because but now,
yeah. I mean, I have to say, I thought Snoke. God, it's so difficult. Was very well realised as a CGI character. He actually fitted in quite well when you finally saw him, when he wasn't just a hologram. But the thing is, when we saw the sort of young Princess Leia in Rogue One, it was Uncanny Valley. So I don't know. I mean, there's the potential of there being sort of some kind of face replacement or something, some CGI character. But
they said they're not going to do that. That's what they've said.
Yeah, but I mean,
we don't know if they've shot anything, but you've got to wait another 2 years.
Yeah, and it depends on when the next film picks up, and it could be just like even just sort of like blurted out in the opening scroll saying, with the unfortunate death of Princess Leia, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The rebellion falls into Hong Kong, or something like that. I don't know, but it could be something that starts with just as simply as that, which would be a little bit crap. But they might not be left with many choices because it depends on what. I suppose I think the family must have a say whether or not they would allow her image to be used. I know that must be a certain sign off that image, likenesses and all that kind of thing can be used, but I don't think they'll do anything to disrespect her memory,
no,
or the family for that matter. So I think there is definitely going to be I know there was a meeting, apparently, wasn't there, not long after she passed away, between the family and Disney and Star Wars people and all that to see, right, how are we going to move forward with this? Is it going to be a CG replacement, or are we going to do this, we're going to do that? So so whatever they're going to do, the plan's already in motion. They've just got to kind of work around it. It is such a shame because it was, and there's some of the, with The Force Awakens, some of my favourite bits within that film, and there was a few of them, but there were those bits between her and Harrison Ford. They were just, they really sort of like did something more, because I did feel Harrison Ford was a bit woody in most of that, but like his scenes with her were fantastic and really sort of like pulled you back into like that Star Wars universe.
No, I liked Harrison Ford in Force Awakens. He seemed to be more into it than he has been in a lot of the other films he's been doing recently.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I didn't.
No, I mean, have you seen that film Ender's Game, where he plays a general? Oh, that was like.
That was for the money.
That was for the He just really didn't care. That's where they these impressions of him mumbling come from, for doing the interviews for Ender's Game. Yeah.
We were there for one of them as well, and it was he is an awkward bugger. Put it mildly. There's moments that he can be fine, I'm sure, but there's not that many of them, I don't think.
Oh, I actually thought he was sort of giving it his all in Force Awakens, and I think I think he got he got a great send off in it, and Luke got a great send off in this.
Yeah. I mean, there was apparently obviously this is a very long film as it was, but there was a Han funeral scene that got cut out of this apparently, but they did actually film a funeral scene for Han, which, to be honest, I wish they'd sort of left that in and got rid of some of the other stuff instead. But unfortunately, but I don't know whether we might get something there, from that on the deleted scenes or something on one of the releases.
Possibly.
But it was filmed apparently, and that would have involved Carrie, I guess. So,
So I thought he was going to pop up as some kind of like hologram recording or something like that. But in the when Luke saw R2 and he did the hologram thing, I somehow thought, because I know that they said how he was contracted for like the 3 films. So, and whether that was just a kind of as a bit of a rouge because he was actually going to get polished off. But it would have been nice to like see a little hologram type of thing pop up. But then you're starting to get into kind of Star Trek territory. Sort of like the holograms starting to pop up everywhere. Yeah. Should I get that with Star Trek? Because there was no holograms, and now there's holograms everywhere. It's a little bit weird, but that's another story.
Yeah, I like the fact that the dice featured, a close up in this film, and it makes me wonder whether part of that's a little bit of. They were always there. We just never got a close up of them, and I just wonder now whether that's a bit of a foreshadowing for the Han Solo movie, perhaps,
I think the dice is meant to be more symbolic about something like about the Star Wars lore and how he won the Falcon and what the Falcon means and how it's being passed on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little touch that I think the dice have always been there, and I don't think Lucas has ever really sort of concentrated on them. But if, like me, I used to play the card game, where you collect the cards, and Hans dice were very much a part of that game, and it's it is actually still taken from A New Hope. So the fact that they included that in the film, I thought was great. It was a nice little touch that I don't think people were quite aware of.
Yeah, no, I thought it was nice that we actually finally got to see them up close rather than just glistening at the top of the cockpit. So, you know, that was cool. I liked all of the, some of the space sequences, and particularly the sequence where the Falcon, flies through the sort of, that mineral planet at the end. I thought that was fantastic. And I love Williams' score as always. And, what was nice with this one is, yes, there was a new theme for Rose, who's obviously a new character, but, he brought in lots of these sort of other themes into this as well. And it was great to hear that sort of music when the Falcon was going through the planet and stuff. Yeah. So I thought that was amazing, And of course, Yoda's theme.
Favourite moment. It feels really it's really kind of like Empire and Jedi when they're flying down sort of to blow up the Death Star. It felt like that. It's like now this feels really kind of like, because there is something highly iconic about that ship, and it's like if that thing got destroyed in the films, then there would be a fan meltdown, because I think people probably love that ship more than anything else. And it's just that scene really sort of like did nail it, and that was like one of the things, and it's one of the things probably saved a lot of the film for me, that even I didn't completely hate it and I didn't completely enjoy it, but there was just bits that were just like I loved that, and that was one of those bits that just was like yes, and you got that kind of buzz of excitement when he's like bombing through the thing and stuff. But so that was a great scene.
Well, have you guys heard that there's like super fans out there that are campaigning to Star Wars to completely ignore the Last Jedi and then redo it? And there's actually people out there that they're signing petitions.
Yeah, there's a change.org petition.
Because people got time.
To do what? Sorry. Say that again. To
remove The Last Jedi as canon.
Yes, get rid of it completely. I've never heard of that before.
What?
Yeah.
Yes, it seems about 80 people signed it.
Mm.
Bloody hell. Well, I mean, whereas I say I have a few issues with the film, removing it from the canon is a tad further than I'd think with that.
They didn't mention the prequel.
I have a few niggles with it as a fan, but at the same time, enjoyable film, and I like a lot of the things they did in it. I mean, how do we feel about Yoda? We've not spoken about Yoda coming back. How do we feel about that?
I was really happy to see him back.
Yeah.
There was one. I remember. What was it? I read somewhere. Someone had. They'd zoomed in on the trailer shot of the Rock and said that looks like Yoda. Yoda's in it, and that was extreme fanning on someone else's part, because I just randomly saw it and thought it's a Rock.
Well, if you look on IMDb, unfortunately, he's listed there as Yoda, as Frank Oz, and it's quite prominent. But I was happy I didn't know about it. It was. It was just. I was so happy to see him turn up. There's like, miss you, I have Skywalker.
Well, there's rumours that they were going to have. What's his name?
He definitely had the best line in it he said about the ancient writings, and he goes, "Page turners, they are not."
Yes, Redden you have. Page turners, they are not.
It was good to see Yoda. I thought that was. A nice touch.
But did you notice that the actual Jedi texts didn't get destroyed? That they're actually on the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they were there at the end, weren't
they?
Yes. Yeah, Rey had taken them out, I guess, or whatever.
Yes.
But I didn't pick up on that until the second time I saw the film. To be fair, I hadn't noticed that until then, and I was like, oh yeah. But
I've just realised you guys have missed a really essential scene in the film that is like causing quite a stir in the universe.
The light speed.
No, Adam Driver topless.
Oh, what on their Force Time call where she says, "Can you put on a cape or a robe?" Or something?
I just thought it was hilarious because I'm on Twitter just reading things, and it's like it's a thing now, and there's a GIF and there's a meme. It's like it's only been a few days. It's been out. Actually, it's been a week, and it's like got people going all over it.
Yeah.
And I was already screenshotted it and sent it to Simon and my sister, because I do weird things like that. But yeah, it's suddenly become a new thing. I just find it hilarious.
Yeah, because it's this weird thing, because it was this weird thing where his head looks really tiny. It's like they had superimposed like a bodybuilder's body onto him. You know, it looks slightly weird. I mean, I'm sure it is him. I'm sure he bulked up and worked out for that shot, but. It just, I don't know, I think it was the angle or something. It just looked slightly off. That first shot.
Do you ever play Altered Beast?
Yes.
That's what it reminded me of.
He's going to turn into an animal.
That's it, just before he was full wolf. It was just, it was. I had a copy, I probably still got it in the loft somewhere, it was years and years ago, of Terminator 2. Right. And it was shot like front row, so it's like the days like people discovered camcorders and stuff. So they shot this thing. So Arnie's like body was massive at the bottom, but because of the angle of the camera, our head is tiny. Exactly. If I ever find it, which I'm sure I'll find it somewhere, I'll try and do some kind of screen rex. That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what I saw. But now I want to see it again because I want to checking for like if he's got like a bullet wound or anything like that or the bolt wound from when he was shot by Chewie and things like that.
Oh yeah, he's got that. He's got the scar. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't see a problem with that scene. I mean, it made for a funny line for Daisy Ridley, and she doesn't get many of them, so I thought that worked well. I mean, that was good. One of the things I thought the film handled well as well in the sort of Star Wars style, and this is sort of less about the internal universe now and more about the sort of editorial side of it. But I thought it did its cross-cutting between scenes really well. But one of the things I did miss, and I could say the same of Rogue One on this as well, is I missed the transitions. They didn't have the sort of George Lucas wipes and whatever, which JJ did put in on his one. So
they did have a couple of them, not as many, but they did have a couple of them.
Yeah, there's a couple.
There was one.
I think they only did it when they went to go see to Luke. It was only done when it was on Act 2.
Yeah,
because that's like another homage. But anything else, it was just done normally.
Yeah, I remember once. Yeah, I do remember one on an island. I remember there's one. It was like one of those. It was like an iris effect that went down and then it dissolved at the same time. I can't remember the context of how the two shots were cut together now, or what was before and afterwards. But I remember one of those, and he just kind of, I don't know if it went onto the planet, and I can't remember now.
Yeah, right, fair enough.
But there was definitely a couple of them in there.
Yeah. So, do you think this film as sort of, with The Force Awakens, Rey was very much accused of being a Mary Sue. Do you think this film's now kind of wiped that clean?
Mary Sue.
Mary Sue is when an author puts themselves into a story and they're like best friends with the characters, and they, they're actually better than the main characters, and they know everything, and they're all, there's no faults.
Okay, I can see why someone would say that, but at the same time, I mean, I think the thing with Rey is, we were expecting to get a lot more answers about Rey in this film, and she's still very mysterious, which in some respects is good. There was a point in the film where we thought, they did that nice effect where she was in the mirror and whatever, and it looked like we were going to get some sort of reveal as to who her family lineage is, and we didn't. And we get Kylo Ren basically telling her that they were nobodies, and it has nothing to do with the fact that she's as strong in the Force as she is. But I mean, I still think we've got a shitload of mystery surrounding Rey, which still needs resolving. I mean, that's.
Well, I mean, I thought the film did a good way of sort of saying, well, the reason why she became this powerful was because there was an imbalance in the Force. Because Kylo Ren was so powerful, there needed to be an opposite, and the reason why they were searching for Skywalker is because they thought he was the main threat. He was gonna, be the powerful Jedi. but because he blocked himself off from the Force had gone somewhere else, and it was Rey. So hence why her abilities were, came about so quickly. And I thought, that does explain it, because they did it in such a really nice way of doing it. When Luke's trying to persuade her that the Force is about balance. It's, he was saying it's folly for the Jedi to think that they had all these powers just because, that they deserved it, or they, it belonged to them. And it was just, it was the way of the galaxy balancing itself out, that there had to be, light and dark, good and evil. And so I enjoyed that. I think also the fact that, it's a case of, do you believe what Kylo Ren tells her?
Well, there's that, isn't there? Yes,
well, I would rather her be, the child of these two, the worst parents in the whole universe, selling her off for drink or food or whatever, than her being like the daughter or granddaughter of Obi-Wan Kenobi or Luke Skywalker, because it then just makes the universe really tiny, and it also just it keeps going back to the Skywalker family line. It's like, it's a big galaxy. There's other families.
Well, he does say in it that that's her biggest weakness, her parents, and saying to her, your parents are nobody, love, but you're something to me. It's that's a manipulation on that part, and his part it could be, but there's, until the third film, you're not going to have much answers. But it is very intriguing how they go about doing that. Cause, you don't see it coming.
Because,
you think he's going to say something really profound, and then she's going to find out. And it's like, nah.
Well, that was the whole setup in Force Awakens. I mean, the whole shot of her as a child seeing the ship flying off. It was like, well, obviously she was like hidden there, like Luke. Because that was the impression they were giving, that she was the daughter of somebody, some Jedi or something, and she was hidden away on this planet. But I actually prefer the fact that it's not that.
But do you think it's something that J.J. Abrams might change again? He might say, no, actually, this is what I want. Now he's going to be coming back to the third.
Yeah.
It's like, you might have undone these things, but no, I want this. So and which you can do. You can do anything. Say, like, snort, actually put that image in their heads about who her parents are, so they're still hidden and all that kind of stuff. So do you think it's possible that he may try and bring it back to what he wanted the second film to effectively be, and the story to sort of like eventually unfold to? Or he will try and pick it up more from what Rian Johnson's trying to do and end it the way Rian Johnson.
I hope he kind of mixes it, because there is, you don't know who the Knights of Ren are, and there's so many things that need to be explained, that because there are reasons, because these are Snoke's character, you can it doesn't really matter much now, but there's things you kind of need to find out about how it's going to progress on.
Yeah.
Basically, I think the next one, I don't think it's going to be the darkest one, but it is going to be probably one of the more heavier ones, because obviously, Princess Leia is going to die, and there's so many things that are going to go forward, because you've got all these new heroes, because each of the heroes is kind of replacing the older heroes, the ones that, have gone. I mean, would you say Leia's Luke and Poe's Han and Finn is Leia? But they say that people have been campaigning that they want to bring back Lando Calrissian, because then he would be basically the last of the original, semi-original characters.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, who is actually... I mean, there's only, like, Anthony... original cast or characters.
They can't get rid of him. They've tried. They just can't get rid of Anthony.
I've heard the stories about that as well.
I have to say, though, I must admit...
was all right in this.
Yes, he was. In Force Awakens, he was really bloody annoying. He was just shoehorned in there.
With his red arm.
With his red arm, yeah. And also Rogue One as well. It's like,
he shouldn't have been there in Rogue One. That was the one thing in Rogue One that didn't make any sense. Is
Exactly.
R2 and 3PO shouldn't have been on Yavin at that point. They should have already been on the
blockade runner. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is one of my minor nitpicks with Rogue One, which that's a whole nother podcast. But I'm a massive fan of Rogue One. Is my Star Wars. You know, it really is. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, this does leave a lot of questions still. But yeah, fair enough. I mean, we got a whole nother film to go. You know, to close off this part of the saga, and it'll be something to look forward to. But certainly, Ryan Johnson went against expectations with a lot of this, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. My issues with the film is more to do with some of the, if you like, the pacing. And some of the, like, as we've already gone into in detail, some of the humour in it, etc. But overall, I mean, I think, by the way, one of the strongest things in it as well was I really loved the fight sequence between Rey and Kylo and the Royal Guards or whatever they're called. I know there's been a whole extended universe thing on those guys, hasn't there? I think the Royal Guards.
They're Palpatine. I've forgotten the name of these guys. They're different, but they're quite similar. But that was kind of like, well, that's big. But then it was someone read something say like it's the first Star Wars film and there's not a lightsaber battle, but there is, but it's just not with lightsabers together. It's like, yeah, that's
exactly.
Cool. Yeah. So the nerds are like, whoo-hoo. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a lightsaber battle with Luke and Kylo at the end. It's just the fact that Luke never really...
he weren't there.
He
never attacked. No.
He phoned it in.
he was more dodging than he was attacking.
Mm.
My Captain Continuity was going nuts though before the reveal. It really was. I was like, "What the?" So hold on, he dyed his beard and cut his hair. What the fuck, and all this. But it made sense.
It was a bit at first, but then you think, well, I'll ride it out because this is going somewhere. So because I was thinking like that, maybe it was like some kind of a hologram or something like that. But I thought, no, it can't be. But because he was like interacting with different people in the way that he was, but it was like, I'm glad that kind of played out all right in the end, because I just thought it was a little bit vain. Go and dye your beard and stuff like that before you go in a battle. It's like, but anyway,
he's getting his war paint on.
Put on your girdle.
I wasn't sure about did Edmondson die in it, or was he just?
That's the thing. You didn't see him die.
No, he couldn't have died because he was on. He was with the same ship as Hux, and Hux was alive because they were in the same place together. So hopefully he'll be in the next one.
That's right then.
Yeah, there's already been some Eddie Hitler memes already.
I found one.
Yeah, he's there going, Richie.
Oh, it was just so. That made my day when I saw him.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
No, it was great. Yeah.
Any relative? Well, I have a mother. Yes.
So, I think we should sort of wrap it up now.
I think we've done it to death, haven't we?
Yeah. But I mean, so at the end of the day,
have we got balance in the force? Is what I want to know. Though, do you think we've accomplished a balance in the force?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
But was it balance in the force? I think that's what the next one's going to be called. That's my theory. Going to put that out there.
Prediction time. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, does it make sense though? Because it's like, where can we go? Can't do revenge. Can't do return. It's something's awakened, and they've been the last of something. Can't be the first of something now, can it?
Could be Attack of something.
Oh, God. The death of something. Something.
Something Dark Star. Yeah, dark side.
I'm just hoping to see that film Blue Harvest. Terror that's beyond. I can't remember the tagline. Damn it.
Beyond the farm.
Beyond your farm, yes.
It's going to be the bottom battle.
Oh, God.
So yeah, so I mean, we can all agree it's it's been worth seeing on the big screen, and
for sure.
yeah, and I have to say it's nice to actually see a director's vision being wholly put up on the screen. It didn't feel like there was any tinkering with this one.
Did you feel that in Rogue One?
Oh, we know it's happened in Rogue One.
Yeah, but it felt very, very fluid, despite the fact that it was obviously multiple reshoots. And I don't think for this one, there's only one scene I've heard about in the trailer that didn't appear. That was Rey running. Because she didn't do any running in it, did she?
That's true.
But fans, they nitpick as they do about trailers and things not appearing.
It's part of her Jedi training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. Did I miss that? Luke said there was 3 things he was going to teach her, and I could only count 2. So I don't know. Was there a third, or was the third just what happened at the end?
He didn't get to finish it because she naffed off, didn't she?
Well, he caught her, force timing Kylo.
Go to bed.
That's their way of getting around the fact they haven't got mobile phones and Skype in the Star Wars galaxy, isn't it? We've got force time.
Yes, or as Qui-Gon Jinn uses in Phantom Menace, it's a lady's shaver.
Lady shaver. Oh dear.
Did you not know that?
And there's things I don't want to know about that film. Best not knowing. You got all the merchandise.
That was the other thing.
Shoot polisher.
Yeah, but that was the other thing. Suddenly, in Phantom Menace, suddenly the Jedi have all of James Bond's gadgets as well, and it's like what to go underwater and all this sort of thing. But
that's right.
But there you go. We've already done that one to death, haven't we? So
just a bit, yeah.
Well, the other thing I like about The Last Jedi is that they haven't gone down the route of the prequels where I think shiny, new, because it's like everything was newer than it should have been. But they've kind of kept it. Yes, everything's a bit worn and tattered and not really working great, but it's they're still using it. Where the prequels, everything was just disgustingly new.
This is true. Particularly Luke, he was a bit rough around the edges in this one, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, before he got the dye job.
Yeah,
indeed.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Alrighty, blue rinse.
Yes. Well, I think that's a good place to end it, and I'm sure people can make up their own minds. I mean, I don't even remember that there being so much of this kind of backlash straight away with Phantom Menace. So it kind of feels weird that people are coming out to attack this film.
It's a different world now, though, isn't it? With like the internet and the way we kind of communicate has expanded. Because what's Phantom Menace was 99?
99, yes.
I mean, it was just even though we obviously had the internet and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't quite. It wasn't
not like it is now.
Yeah. We didn't have Facebook. I don't even have MySpace even back then, really. So no, we didn't. I don't think it was MySpace. It's only just about like YouTube and stuff. So was it YouTube back then?
No.
Back Messenger, didn't you, or something like that?
Back then, if you wanted to watch a trailer,
that was it. Hyperspace is all that existed. Yeah.
No, back then, if you wanted to watch a trailer, because Phantom Menace there was a trailer online, but you actually had to download it overnight to actually watch it, and it was about the size of a stamp.
Very, very well.
Yeah.
Who did that?
So,
I remember downloading that. It's actually my mate that I went to see the Star Wars with the other night. He came round, and I think I'd not long had a modern day computer from Tiny Computers with my 6 gig hard drive, and downloaded this really pixelated, like crappy looking thing, but it was just like, oh my god, this looks amazing, and just being blown away. I think only prior to that I downloaded the X-Files trailer to the film they did, the first film.
Oh right.
And I remember, and it took hours, and then world moved on, and by the time Attack of the Clones came out, I was really keen to see, because I knew it was all shot digitally, so I was very keen to see how clean the image was going to look. And that took like all day to download that trailer, although that was in HD, whereas the Phantom Menace one was just, I probably still got it on like a random hard drive somewhere. But yeah, I remember those days well. All buzzing away of like the modem and stuff.
Good old days. There you go.
Well, speaking
Antonia,
of internet,
while you're on, do you have anything that you want to promote, or anything that you're working on, or anything like that we always give our guests that opportunity if you want to have it?
No.
Fair enough. That's easy then.
Anthony, is there any updates about Ghostbusters?
Oh yeah. There's always.
Oh God, how long have we got?
Yeah, it's all going well. We are currently cutting the 90-minute version of the doc. We've got it's more than a rough, really, to be honest. We've got a rough hour of the 3-hour version, the full kind of like fan version, I suppose. But that isn't quite commercially viable, so we've got to chop it down, and we're hoping to get that roughed by sort of like the end of Jan, and have it all polished up, both versions kind of polished up by spring. And then we'll be working on part 2, all about Ghostbusters 2. So we are actually very close, and it's looking great because we've got there's all like motion graphics are in now, or most of them. There's a few patches here and there, which will just take us to spring to kind of like fill in those little blanks. But yeah, it's in a really good spot, and the fact that we have a version that's almost kind of complete is a very nice feeling after all these years. So needs to have all the sound worked on, and have all that kind of balanced, and have a proper score. So I've only put a temp score in. But yeah, and every day we're getting something new. I just got an email from someone about a song that was written and was only ever used in the very first teaser trailer for it. And we were able to find out who did it, and they've still got it, and so I've got to email them back, actually. So yeah, all on the Ghostbusters front is good, and we look set to be in a good little place come 2018. So yeah, I'm quite happy.
Excellent.
And where can people find out more about that, Anthony?
Well, if they don't know by now, then sod them. It's on, look on our website, which is buenoproductions.com. And a lot of the information is there, but of course there is the joys of Facebook. So just do a search for Cleaning Up the Town, Remembering Ghostbusters on Facebook, or just do a search for Ghostbusters Doc, and that's also on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I think I don't think I've forgotten anything there. So yeah, they're the places, and you can still contribute into our kind of crowdfunding if you want to get your name in the credits, or get any other the incentives that we've got there. You're still able to do that through the website, and that is something we will lock down probably early part of the new year. Certainly, once we've sort of like locked the doc, then we just won't be able to put more names back in. So at some point we'll be locking it off. But anyway, so yeah, but that's where you can get all the information about it and see the trailer and see what's coming soon.
Splendid.
And Keith, where can people find your work?
If you go to YouTube and put in British Isles, spelled EYLES, as in my last name, there's some short films that I've made there, and obviously you can get in touch through the podcast.
And as always, you can find my work through independentrunnings.com. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and all good podcast providers. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Movie Heaven, Movie Hell. And please leave us a rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher. It all helps. So that just leaves me to thank our guests for coming on.
Thank you very much. I very much enjoyed the release of being able to talk about the film. And can now feel very comfortable when I sit and watch it on Sky in about a year. So thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Enjoyed, I have.
And join us for the next episode of Movie Heaven, Movie Hell.
Catch you later, kid.